Okay. All glories to Mother Ratasha. All glories to the religion of love. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Supreme Lord. O Lord God, please help us live out these teachings and be an example in the world. Jai. Okay, so today we're starting from a new book, Sin. Ooh, sin. This word has a lot of stigma to it, which we hope by the end of today's class, that stigma will be removed and replaced with knowledge. I'll tell you a funny joke real fast. One day, Rajak was taking account of what books were needed out in the field with different disciples, and they were saying, "Oh, we need more peace book. We need more, one God, one religion. We need more sin." And Mother Hatasha heard this in the background. She's like, "What? We need more sin?" It's like, "Oh, okay, the book." So, sin. The word sin, as used in the religion of love, is meant to be understood in its original meaning. First used on the archery fields of medieval England, the referee would call out sin if the shot was off center, giving the bowman a chance to adjust his aim. There is no connotation of guilt or shame associated with the word sin in the religion of love. Now, right off the bat, there is a definition given for the word sin. Just like in the beginning of this book entirely, there's a definition for the word religion. Re again, legio tiling, the process and practices by which we come again to God. So Mother Tasha saw fit to give a little definition of this word so that we understand it in the proper context. Because just like that word religion, sin is quite a triggering word. And it's used in a lot of heavy contexts, often in unfavorable means. So, what does this word sin mean? Now, this definition coming from the archery fields of England, and I've heard some people on the internet argue the etymological origin of the word, but it even relates, if we're going to talk in biblical terms, to the word. I just forgot it. I just studied. But the word for sin in the Greek is also used in archery. Chamitia, that's it. And that literally means missing the mark. Just like how here a referee on an archery field will say sin if the bowman miss the target, giving the bowman a chance to adjust his aim. So missing the mark. Now, a devotee of God, his target is God. And what we do in our life, the steps we take, our desires, our actions, we try to align ourselves, we try to aim the direction of our life towards our target, towards the divine. So, there's no connotation of guilt or shame in this context. Rather, the word sin just means you're off the mark. You're not pointing in the right direction. Well, at least not in the direction aiming towards your ultimate end. I hope you don't hear some of that sound. A gardener decided to show up just at this moment. So if you hear some weed whackers and leaf blowers in the background, oof, what timing. So no connotation of guilt or shame. Just realign your aim. So sin, you could say, is any action that doesn't bring you closer to the goal of God, but that action is pointing you in a different direction. Basically that. All right, let's read the book. Who can recount the wonderful days of our beginnings, when wishing to serve God for love and the welfare of all, we began what would become a spiritual revolution, igniting in our hearts a fire that would set our souls ablaze and burn the whole world to ashes. It is of these beginning times that I, Rajak Khan, do speak here. It was late in the year, the time when a cold wind sweeps over the plains, that I and some of the devotees met making a pilgrimage. Our pilgrimage, though, was not to stone or history, but to God. For we travelled the path made straight, the path by which a man may come again to God. And having met, so sat together in the pale light of a winter's night, while the moon, narrow as a scythe, sliced the night away. And it was there we fell to reminiscing of our spiritual master. She who was given everything by God gave up everything to God, selling home, properties, and jewels, and gave her life to speak the message of God, to all and for all. The people call her the Angel of Bengal. And I, in an unguarded moment, for I was with devotees, God brother and God sister all, revealed this secret, that I had met her in a dream, before I met her, and so in meeting her in life, did meet with her again. And another said, How strange, for I too did meet her twice in dreams, before we met. Once, as a child, I dreamed her among all children dressed in white, a statue come to life. The joy I felt I can't describe, nor can I speak the rest right now. Then 2 years more, and once again she did appear in dreams, to teach the chanting of the holy names of God to me. And hearing of these things, we marveled much. And one who knew did say, In ways miraculous to man, so comes the word of God into the world. When next day, in early morning dark, cold sky and icy moon glared down upon the fields, and found us at our prayers, the heavens heard the different names of God, for we were all of different lands, religions, castes, and different clans. And though from different countries did we come, from the same place had all begun this holy pilgrimage. Desire was this place. Some desired material benefits, seeking from the Master blessings of health, of wealth, of name and fame, and more of more. Others desired to satisfy their curiosity. A few desired knowledge, but most came because they suffered, and so desired the peace of bliss and happiness. But it was only when we had exhausted our desires, and when our desires had exhausted us, that a true desire was born, the spiritual desire for God. And God, being pleased, fulfilled our desire, sending to us a guide, and so by her came we to the path made straight, the path by which a man may come again to God. All right, let's hear some commentary. Who can recount the wonderful days of our beginnings, when wishing to serve God for love and the welfare of all, we began what would become a spiritual revolution, igniting in our hearts a fire that would set our souls ablaze and burn the whole world to ashes. So, I've said before that material life in the beginning is sweet, but in time grows bitter. Whereas spiritual life in the beginning is bitter, but in time grows sweet, and sweeter still. But the very, very beginning of spiritual life, however, is very exciting. So before it becomes bitter and becomes the grind, the beginning days are actually quite ecstatic, actually. You're on the precipice of a new beginning, start of your new life, really, as now you're on the path to God and to life eternal and abundant. And it's quite exciting, actually. So Rajak's recounting those days in the very beginning, when you first come again to this path, when you take to the path the practices that which you can purify your heart and leave all suffering behind, is quite exciting. And we began what would become a spiritual revolution. Now, remember from the class Spiritual Revolution, that word revolution, as you know, means to revolve. So you start from one point, you go all the way around to the beginning, to the origin, and that's one revolution. So a real revolution isn't creating something new, but returning again to your spiritual origin, reawakening to your original spiritual consciousness of eternal knowledge and bliss, of devotion, igniting in our hearts a fire that would set our souls ablaze and burn the whole world to ashes. Now, we're not talking again about a material revolution. We're not talking about Molotov cocktails here. Burning the world to ashes. No. Now burn it all down. No, not that type of revolution. When she's saying set our souls ablaze, well, one of the analogies of the spirit soul in the scriptures is likened to a fire that's covered in smoke. And if you can imagine, when there's so much smoke covering the fire, or so much illusion or ignorance covering the spirit soul, the light, the warmth of that fire is diminished. So too is our consciousness is covered over by the smoke or the haze of the illusory energy of this world, of our ignorance, our forgetfulness of our true nature. So this analogy of setting our souls ablaze means more or less rekindling, reawakening to that fire within ourselves, the real us shining. As it said, you are more brilliant than 1,000,000 suns, billion suns even. That's the true beauty and glory of every spirit soul. You couldn't behold the dazzling effulgence of the spirit from or materialize. It's impossible. You can't. Just like how you can barely even stare at the sun. Well, imagine 1,000,000,000 suns right in front of you. That's the nature of the soul. It's so bright. And the world that we are burning to ashes is our illusions, all of our worldly consciousness. That is what we are burning up by the fire of devotional service, these spiritual practices, reawakening to our natural state. It is of these beginning times that I, Raja Khan, do speak here. It was late in the year, the time when a cold wind sweeps over the plains, that I and some of the devotees met making a pilgrimage. Our pilgrimage, though, was not to stone or history, but to God. For we traveled the path made straight, the path by which a man may come again to God. Okay, pilgrimage. Now, what is our conception of pilgrimage? Our common idea is that we make a journey to some distant land, usually, to look upon the stones and bones of saints, or to visit a place where prophets or messengers had given the message before. These holy places of pilgrimage. And someone may make a pilgrimage once a year, once in a lifetime, etc., depending on their traditions. But for the devotee of God, who walks the path made straight, who walks this lifelong journey of making themselves straight before God, purifying and rectifying all things not of love from their heart, becoming a truly good person, and then transcending beyond that to a truly spiritual, reawakened person, your whole life is a holy pilgrimage. It's not just once a year or once in a lifetime. Every day you're making a pilgrimage within your heart back to God. And having met, so sat together in the pale light of a winter's night, while the moon, narrow as a scythe, sliced the night away. And it was there we fell to reminiscing of our spiritual master. She, who was given everything by God, gave up everything to God, selling home, properties, and jewels, and gave her life to speak the message of God to all and for all. The people call her the Angel of Bengal. So, Mother Atasha's life story, if you read her biography, she did grow up in opulence. She was blessed with wealth and beauty and many, many, many wonderful blessings given by God. But as it says in the Religion of Love book, many blessings can you count, but blessings only bless when used to good account. So how you use things, that's what's important, what you do with those blessings. And the devotee of God who frees themselves of the false sense of proprietorship, the illusion that we actually own anything, because in knowledge understands that everything is the property of God. God is the creator, sustainer, and annihilator of this entire material cosmos. What doesn't belong to God? It's silly to think that this is mine, that is mine, this is this. It's quite silly. Everything belongs to God. Now, of course, we don't infringe on other people's stuff and be like, hey, it's God, so let me take that. No, we don't do that. No, but at least whatever facilities that God has blessed us with, whatever possessions or money or whatever things that God has blessed us temporarily with the use of, made a steward of, the perfection of life is to use everything in the service of good, in the service of God. So you don't have to give up everything. So Mother Atasha, her personal example, she gave up many things, and it is purifying to the mind to give up some of these things that we think we own. It is purifying to give them as gifts, give them away. Have few things, but have them well, she would often say. But that doesn't mean you have to give everything away like Mother Atasha did. That's not necessary. That's not the criteria for holiness. As it says in other parts of the book, if poverty was the criteria for holiness, every beggar on the streets would be a saint. So no, it doesn't mean that. But what did Mother Atasha give up? Properties, home, jewels, things like that. So for her, and this is her own personal path, you don't have to imitate, of course. But for Mother Atasha, knowing her mission, what she was called to do, her service, she had no need for jewels. She had no need for these properties. She had no need for these things as far as practical, how can I use these? So she sold all those things that she really had no practical use of in devotional service and used them in the best way, serving the poorest of the poor, as she saw was the best way I could utilize in service. And that's what a devotee does. Devotee looks at everything in the context of, how can I use this in loving service? Or what is the best course of action to bring me to the highest state of love and others as well? Moving on. And I, in unguarded moment, for I was with devotees, God brother and God sister all, revealed this secret, that I had met her in a dream before I met her, and so in meeting her in life, did meet with her again. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit into what is it like being amongst devotees. So Rajak, who's the narrator here, but also representing the everyman, he's a sincere, surrendered soul unto God. And amongst devotees, his God brothers and God sisters, those who are also on the path, who get him, he revealed this secret that he had met Mother Atasha in dream years before he actually met her in person. It's actually a true story. A couple times, actually, he dreamed of Mother Atasha. In fact, he still has it. He has a notebook from when he was a child, I think in his teenage years. where he actually wrote down her name, Mother Ritasha. And this is years before Mother Ritasha ever came to Bangladesh. And this young kid in Rajshahi in Bangladesh would have no way of ever knowing who she was. So it was quite miraculous, actually. As it says later, in ways miraculous to man, so comes the word of God into the world. But as it says, in an unguarded moment, he revealed this secret. So you'll notice that the real ones, they don't shout from the rooftops, I had this experience, oh my God, I'm enlightened, I'm this. No, they're very, very meek and humble, actually. The real gentle devotees. They don't really talk about these things with people because they don't feel people will understand, or they might think they're making it up. So they kind of keep it to themselves, really. And that's actually not a bad thing. As Jesus said in the Bible, better you pray in the closet than pray out loud and for others to see. Make a show of yourself, for your own aggrandizement. No. But Rajak shared this with his godbrothers and god sisters because he felt that they understood his heart and they wouldn't take it wrongly, because these are very, very deep and personal experiences that devotees sometimes have in life by the mercy of God and the blessings of the spiritual master. So there's a couple times some of you guys, I'm just thinking, some of you guys who've been on the server for a little bit longer, the Religion of Love online center, our Discord server, sometimes we get a few people that join the server, and immediately, what do? Sometimes they say, I had this vision, or I had an encounter, and they start publicly talking about it, and then we're all like, oh, that's awesome, that's lovely, it's nice. And then after they do their big hurrah, then they just leave the server. It's like once the attention on themselves died down, they left. So we're not seeking attention. No. We just want to be of loving service. Be a good person. That's what we're after, really. And another said, how strange, for I too did meet her twice in dreams before we met. Once as a child I dreamed her among all children dressed in white, a statue come to life. The joy I felt I can't describe, nor can I speak the rest right now. Then 2 years more, and once again she did appear in dreams to teach the chanting of the holy names of God to me. And one of our brothers here, I shared it with him. I had to share with someone. He's, with all you devotees here, I'll tell you that. Okay, I'll share with y'all. Last night I had a dream with Mother Ritasha, and she came to help teach me about sin. Actually prepared me for this class, and it was a quite crazy dream. I'm not going to get into it, but she definitely was teaching me sin, and it was graphic. There was some sinning going on in this dream. I'm not going to but that was a wonderful blessing, and was praying a lot about that, and it kind of helped me a little bit prepare for sharing these teachings today. So all glories to Mother Ritasha. And hearing of these things we've marveled much. And one who knew did say, in ways miraculous to man, so comes the word of God into the world. When next day, in early morning dark, cold sky and icy moon glared down upon the fields and found us at our prayers, the heavens heard the different names of God, for we were all of different lands, religions, castes, and different clans. Yes, and as most you know, Mother Ritasha accepted all people, all sincere devotees. She didn't see anybody as, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, atheist. She didn't see them as man, woman, rich, poor, black, white, American, Indian, none of this. She didn't see any of these outward designations. She just saw the eternal spirit soul. And anyone who was sincere in their heart and who could come up to the standard of devotion and discipline, she would accept as a disciple and take under her wing. So, beautiful thing, actually. My first time going to an I camp in Bangladesh, that's how I first came to the message, to this life, was through charity work. And I went and volunteered at one of the charity's I camps. Up to 10,000 people showed up, all got free medicine, all got free treatment and up to 100 operations, and I helped the doctors holding a flashlight for the operation. It was a beautiful experience, hard work too. But I was so moved when I saw Mother Atasha's disciples of all these different backgrounds, Hindu backgrounds, Muslim backgrounds, Christian backgrounds, in an area where all these groups are fighting and killing each other. Really. There's a lot of violence in those days, even today, actually, and a lot of crazy fanatic groups there that will harm or kill others who have different beliefs than them. But here, in the midst of all that craziness in that land, were all these sincere, loving people who all just loved God and were just doing this wonderful service out of love, for nothing in return but just to give out of love and service. And some would chant Allah, some would chant Krishna, some would chant Abba. I mean, it was glorious. It was so beautiful. I was so moved. And that experience actually was one of the big events in my life which led me to this path, actually. And though from different countries did we come, from the same place had all begun this holy pilgrimage. Desire was this place. Desire. Nothing begins in heaven or on earth without desire. And there's a whole book called Desire we're going to get to, actually. So I'm not going to say too much. Let's focus on the sin stuff. But yes, wink, wink, there's going to be some fun stuff, teachings on desire coming up. Some desired material benefits, seeking from the spiritual master blessings of health, of wealth, of name and fame, and more of more. Others desired to satisfy their curiosity. A few desired knowledge. But most came because they suffered, and so desired the peace of bliss and happiness. It says in the scriptures there are 4 types of people that come to devotional service and surrender unto God. The one seeking wealth or material prosperity, the one who is inquisitive, the one seeking knowledge of the absolute truth, and the one who is suffering very greatly. So these 4 persons, these types of people, are apt to come to the message of God. And it's kind of interesting. You can really see how everybody would fall into that category. You read people's or hear people's story, or a combination of them. But it was only when we had exhausted our desires, and when our desires had exhausted us, that a true desire was born, the spiritual desire for God. And God, being pleased, fulfilled our desire, sending to us a guide. And so by her came we to the path made straight, the path by which a man may come again to God. So, only when we had exhausted our desires, and when our desires had exhausted us. Everything in this world is limited and temporary. And everything we desire, when we get it, that result is limited and temporary, including the joys that we get from those things that we wanted. We may experience some happiness, some satisfaction for some time, but eventually it palls and goes away, and then we want again and again, or we want the next thing, or we want more. And each time, once we get it, it doesn't last again, and we're just going on and on and on, never being fully satisfied, a happiness that lasts forever. So we can get pretty exhausted, pretty burnt out on all these things. And then only when we had exhausted our desires, and when our desires exhausted us, a true desire was born, the spiritual desire for God. And why is it called a true desire? True meaning the result of this desire isn't limited and temporary. For one who acquires spiritual knowledge, for one who purifies their mind of all things illusory and attains to love of God, Well, you gain life eternal and abundant. What's that saying from the Bible? Oh, for one who has God, you have everything, really. You lack nothing. Oh, well, I'll quote the Religion of Love. That I can remember those quotes. I know the teach that. I love the scriptures. I'm not very good at parroting and memorizing all the verses. That's what my phone is for. Respect to all those who can remember, but for one who has much and is accounted, one who has many things and accounted much among men, but who have not God, has nothing really. But one who has nothing and is of no account to anyone, but who has God, has everything. Something like that. Even that I didn't perfectly paraphrase, but you get the idea. And God, being pleased, fulfilled our desire. Yes, when we take one step to God, He takes 1,000 steps to us. God wants us to be happy, and this is a desire that pleases Him, because He knows this will ultimately lead us back to Him into real happiness, to be with Him together again, in a family of God. And so by her came we to the path made straight. It is said, by the grace of God, one gets the spiritual master. And by the grace of the spiritual master, one gets God. Okay, let me pause it there. Start recording. All right. Does anyone have any questions related to the class? Or a comment, perhaps. Pretty clear, everything? Well then, does anyone have any spiritual question they'd like to... Oh, how about my wife? Do you have any?
I'm just thinking that something came to my mind. I'm just trying to.
You're marinating it. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to. I'm just trying to ask in such a way that is right.
Okay. My wife's formulating a question. I know Mead often is formulating some things too. Well, if not related to the class, any spiritual question would be more than appropriate to ask. Or we could call it a night early. That's fine too. I wish I had the Jeopardy music on the soundboard. Do 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 do. Da 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 da.
It sort of almost seems like God made us his little hobby in a way, because he sends us out to the world, hoping that we find our way back to him.
You think so?
Well, it because he creates everything.
Yes.
Why create such burden on him? Yeah, that's.
You mean God's burden? Like, oh, you crazy
No,
kids! He's got a lot
we
to.
are
Oh.
the burden on him. You know, we are the sinners.
Well.
So why. It seems like a project, like almost for him. To be with with him, to come back to him in a way. He lets us go, like what they say, if you love something, let it go, and see if it comes back.
That's actually, that last saying you says actually not quite inaccurate at all. It's actually quite kind of true. According to the scriptures, yes, God is the creator of all of this, and of course he's not burdened by anything. You could never burden the Supreme Lord. It's said that this entire material cosmos with its innumerable amounts of universes within it is all created and sustained just by a tiny plenary portion of God. It's like nothing to him. Just by willing something, it comes into existence. So nothing is ever a burden to the Lord, and he's always full of transcendental bliss, and everything is his pleasing pastime, of course. So, but he didn't send us out here. We all came here of our own free will. So that's another thing taught in the scriptures, that we weren't sent here. Well, some souls are sent here, but they're not put into illusion. They're sent to help us, like wonderful, great messengers of God, for example. But we came here of our own free will, because we, as spirit souls, have all the same qualities of God, because we're all part and parcel of God. We're all because there's nothing that's not of God, including us. We're all a part of God. That doesn't mean we are God. No, none of that demonic philosophy. We're all part of God and one with God in quality, but different in quantity. Whereas a drop of ocean has all the same qualities as the entire ocean, for example. The piece shares the qualities of the whole. Or a little speck of gold taken from a nugget of gold has the same properties as the main nugget. So we have all the same qualities, but in minute quantity, such as infinite intelligence, a little tiny bit of intelligence, supreme creative power. We can create a little few things, like that, including free will. We all have free will. If there wasn't free will, there'd be no love, because if everything was just forced, hey, force, obey, do that, it would just be slaves. There's no love in that. Love is a choice. So we all have free will, and we can choose what we desire. And we're going to get more to the desire teachings later on. So we chose to come here. We did. And we got stuck here because we didn't hear or take heed to the good counsel that God gave us, basically. We're taught that our actions will have reactions to them, especially in this world. It's called karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. Every action has an opposite or equally reaction. So, I'll tie it back to the word sin. Remember, any action that is not bringing us closer to God is taking us somewhere else. You can say, so technically, any moment or any time we're thinking or acting in a manner that's not bringing us closer to love of God, you could say that's sin, technically speaking, because you're not aiming directly at the Lord, you're somewhere else. And, imagine the target's really, really far away. The example of a sniper with a rifle, for example, who's pointing at a target, a mile away, for example. It's with a high-powered rifle, right? Even just the tiniest millimeter off on your aim will send your shot way off. Even just a little bit off center, you completely miss the target, for example. In this case, there are snipers shooting a watermelon, okay? Keep it PG. So, if we're aiming for God, the Supreme Eternal, and we're just a little bit off in our actions, then we're going to go off in a totally different direction. Or another example would be like, science fiction, doing a hyperspace jump. Can you imagine, traveling such a long distance and you're just a little bit off in your coordinates? Well, you end up in a whole different star system, maybe, right? as we see in the movies. So we chose to come here. And as we're taught in the Religion of Love book, which we're going to get to, we chose here to come to the highest state of love, actually. Because the question always bothered me, and I didn't quite understand, original sin, because that's what the scriptures teach of original sin, envy of God, wanting to be God, wanting not to serve but to be served, thinking that we will enjoy greater if we were the one who was the head honcho and everyone was adoring and worshiping us. That is the original sin, that envy of God, which makes us fall from grace. But I couldn't quite understand that, because if everyone's perfect and beautiful and full of love in the spiritual world, where would that notion come from? Right?
The interpretation that I had for original sin was that it can be read as I guess, metaphorical or like representative of the awakening of consciousness, of the sense of self, the point where we deviate, we take control over our own conscious worlds, and we become, we depart from the spiritual world, we enter the material by recognizing, okay, I exist, I can do things, I have a preference for how the world is, and I can distort that reality, and I can walk farther and farther from truth, which is not relative to a certain subjective viewpoint. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I viewed the original sin, at least.
Oh yeah, that's a very similar. I've heard some people explain it similar, and so nice to meet you, new friend. Thanks for talking. Yeah, nice to meet you. so nice to so nice to have you join us. Well, I thought things like that too, and Mother Tasha helped it come clear. And it took me years to really get this, because spiritual knowledge isn't realized with the mind; it's realized with your heart. The mind cannot fathom spiritual knowledge because it's beyond the mind. It really is. I mean, we can kind of grasp it, and we can make good decisions based off the knowledge we get, but to really realize it, that takes purification of that, removing that smoke. Again, the analogy of the soul is like fire. Will remove the smoke and the fire, the light of the real spirit soul will shine. So, in the teachings of Mother Tasha and the Religion of Love, we chose to come here to learn the highest state of love, to learn to love as God loves. Because in the spiritual world, it's easy to love. It's easy. I mean, everything's so lovely. It's so easy. It's not that hard to do. But to love when it is hard, to love when you're tested and tried, to love unconditionally, just as God unconditionally loves all of us. Ooh. So in choosing to love like God loves, not to be like God, but to love like God, to learn that highest state of love, we chose to come here. But when we come here, that's when we fall into illusion's trap. Because the illusory energy of this world is quite powerful. It keeps us forgetful of our natural state. As soon as we're born, we forget everything, and we immediately believe that we are the body. And then we make all of our decisions and our goals in life pleasing the senses of our body and our bodily connections, our family, our society, our country, right? Related because I'm born in this country, this is my land, and when my land is in the Olympics, I'm rooting for the people who are also born in my land. Me, the false conception of I and mine. It's said that when we first come to the material world, we're given a very exalted position. A very exalted position as a very powerful being, a creator of this world, actually. But if we cannot stave off the illusory power by keeping ourselves fixed in loving service, and we get puffed up with a little bit of envy and false prestige, and we miss the mark when it comes time at the end of life, then that's when we fall from grace. That's when we go from the highest position in this material universe all the way down to the lowest, to the single cell organisms. And then the long migration of the soul through all the different species of the material world. It says in the Bhagavad Gita, 8,400,000 species of life to get to eventually. Then there's the human form of life. And then once you get back to the human form of life, after this long migratory process of the soul, that's when you have the opportunity, okay, let me make things right. Let me fulfill the purpose of why I came here. Let me come to that highest state of love, that unconditional, loving surrender and service. But the illusory energy is so powerful. Oof, oof, oof. And it's personified by different names: Shaitan, Satan, Maya. Of course, the teachings are a little different, of course, time and place. But in a sense, there is a power that keeps us off the path, that keeps us sinning, in a sense, or keeps us distracted from the ultimate goal of life. And it's very difficult to overcome. But there is help, and God is always sending reminders of why we came here, of what our purpose is, how to get out of here and come back to the spiritual world. And not only return, but return gloriously. Because, isn't it very difficult to love sometimes down here? When you got people who are so full of anger, testing and trying us, betraying us, hurting us. When you got so many difficulties, so much suffering we have to endure. It's hard. It's hard to love with all these challenges. But that's the beauty in it. You see, if you look at the lives of all the great saints and holy people throughout history, of all the different traditions, any of the religious traditions, a saint is a saint is a saint. Okay? Put a bunch of saints of different backgrounds, different religions, put them all together. Oh, it'll be a wonderful time. It'll be wonderful. There'll be so much love. And if you look at their lives, oh, how much love they had, despite all odds, despite persecution, despite defamation, despite personal attacks, even being put to death. Still, to the last moment, the devotees of God have nothing but love to give. And as Mother Atasha would sometimes kid with us, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. When you squeeze a lemon, you get lemon juice. When you squeeze a devotee, you get love. So, as far as a project goes, well, it's actually our project here, my brother. This whole material creation is actually created for us. And another teaching in the scriptures that describes us, remember the teaching that we're one in quality but different in quantity from God? Well, we're all spiritual beings, but unlike God, we have the tendency to be enamored and allured by either the material or the spiritual energies. We can go both ways as far as what we're attracted to, what we're drawn to. That's why the soul is called the marginal energy of God. It's the spiritual, the material, and the marginal. So we're spiritual beings, but we really can walk the fence on what direction we are pulled into. But if we desire the spiritual, if we desire God, as it said in the Sin Book, that though from different countries we all came, we all began the same place, desire. So if we desire God, God will help us fulfill our desires, just as He helps us fulfill all our desires. Even though He knows they're not really good for us. It's like the kid who wants the cotton candy, and the parents think it's not good for your teeth. It's like, I want it. I'm like, well, it's going to give you a tummy ache. I want it. Okay, here you go. And the kid eats a bunch and gets a tummy ache, right? So that's, we're all God's children. And He doesn't impede on our free will. He doesn't control us. He loves us, and He lets us make our own mistakes. He lets us, and sometimes those mistakes can be quite costly. Costly in the sense and the suffering that we're going to experience in return from those mistakes. And yeah, so God is always trying to fulfill our desires, to fill our happiness. And even though if we desire things that are limited and temporary and truly aren't really happiness at all, since it's just going to go away, it's just all suffering, he lets us, gives us the ability and the facility to do those things. You know, and even from little mini day-to-day things, seriously. You know, the fact that we're able to achieve anything in life, to get that paycheck, to pass that test, to put on your shirt in the morning, you know, all is by God's grace. You know, it helps us fulfill our desires, even the desires that aren't ultimately good for us. But that true desire to be again with God, to live in love, God will help us. And if that desire becomes strong enough, becomes sincere enough, oh, then God will help and help and help and will lead us, will prod us within our heart, you know, poke us in the right direction till we come into contact with devotees of God, and ultimately, eventually, to a master who will guide us all the way home if we follow their instructions. Anybody's questions? Finish marinating? Finish baking? Pop them out of the idea oven? I see something. I see a little mark. Is there someone typing something? No. I just saw a little. Anywho, no did you finish your question?
Finish my question.
I mean, sorry, did you finish cooking it up?
Well, somehow I got my answer with the last part you were talking.
Oh, you got it. You got the answer from what I was just rambling on
but,
about.
I'm not sure if it's a good question even, but I was just curious that we any lifetime we come to this world, we reborn and again to be clear our consciousness and clear our karmas, right? I was wondering that maybe there is no answer for that. It wasn't my mind came to my mind a few times that we come to this world with our karmas. With the karma we carry from last life, we bring it to this life, right?
Sure, each lifetime you're carrying pretty much karma and desire from the previous life, yeah.
And we create new karmas in this life.
Mm-hmm.
But I was
Always making new karma.
Huh?
Yeah.
But I was wondering that is there some test and just God create for us to learn our lesson, or some challenges God create?
Oh yes. Okay. So your question is
just all about our karma. We just any challenges is just about our karma. We have to go through.
Okay, what my wife is asking, is everything coming to us because of our karma, or are some things tests coming from God directly?
And I know that it can be for the test too, but
right.
Sometimes I don't know if this challenge that I'm going through is a test and God make it for me, or it's because of the karma I had.
So my wife is asking, are the challenges she's experiencing in life, are they due to her past karmic reactions, or is it a test sent by God? Well, there's actually an answer to that. There's a quote for that in the Religion of Love book that says, for those who've turned away from God, the trials of life are a punishment. But those who have turned towards God, the trials of life are a test, that when passing, bring us closer again to God. So, in answer to your question, it depends on who you're living your life for and who you've surrendered unto. So, and I know for a fact that, and Mother Tasha has explained this, that for a devotee of God who's initiated by a spiritual master, everything happening from that point of initiation, well, let me recap. So before initiation, everything that comes to us is by the reactions of our past. Cause and effect. Everything has cause and effect. And that's the good and the bad, actually. We say good and bad because whether we enjoy it or it causes us pain. But it's just reactions, just nature. It's not a positive or negative reaction. It's just an equal reaction. And after initiation with a spiritual master, everything happening to that disciple, if they follow disciplinedly, following the instructions, keeping their vows, daily engaged in devotional service, purifying their mind of all things not of love, everything coming to that surrendered soul is coming directly from God. So those challenges are tests. They are like stepping stones. They're hurdles to get over that teach us something, that help us let go of some things, like maybe humble us, let go of some more pride, or teach us that, we're still full of anger, and give us opportunity to let that go. That's what life is like for a devotee of God, if you stay on the path rightly. And that's due because a bona fide spiritual master can take on the karmic reactions of the disciple. And that's exactly what initiation actually is. The bona fide spiritual master pretty much transmutes their karmic reactions into themselves, and the disciple is left with a clean slate. So no more karmic reactions. All the reactions that were spinning around you, orbiting, ready to land, like a satellite coming into orbit, all that's just cut. And now, afterwards, everything is coming from God. Of course, if you stay on the path and keep engaging in devotional service, not accruing more karmic reactions by acting on the material plane. Now, of course, the fan still spins of our material tendencies, of course. It's not just like we come to spiritual life and now I'm no longer, listening to hip-hop. It's still, I might still be into it for a while. I'm not going to just immediately stop gaming, I'm into it. But over time, it's a natural lessening of a lower taste and rise of a higher taste, as the more you purify. But if you break your vows, for example, and you start living a very sinful life again, for example, not following the commandments of God, then acting on that material plane, you're going to create new karma again. But the power of devotional service, chanting names of God, is so powerful that, as long as we stay on the path, keep the instructions, keep our vows, then those tendencies and little reactions we might be accruing, they're mitigated by the power of the chanting of God's holy name.
So you just said that, if I'm not wrong, only people who get initiation, after that all the challenges is a test and trial from God, mercy of God, but how about other people? They don't have a spiritual master or get initiation.
Good question. So you have to be initiated disciple of a master for things to be a test from God? Not necessarily. No. The thing is, what I said about how a disciple is experiencing these things of a master, after initiation with a master, yes, that's true. But that doesn't mean that one sincere. Remember, the quote is, "For one who's turned towards God, the trials of life are a test." So, if God is the supreme destination of your life, if God is your supreme goal in life, and it's He who you're turned towards, then yes, these things are going to be little hurdles bringing you closer and closer and closer to the spiritual master, to the good guide that will show you home. In fact, all devotional service and chanting that one does actually brings one closer to the good guide, closer to the master, actually. When the student is ready, the master will appear, as they say. Okay. Oh, I'm just about run out of time. Anywho, forgive me if anybody else had a last question. We can chat on Discord. Thank you all for coming. Jai Mother Atasha, Jai Prem Dharmo, Jai Bhakta Vrinda. English. All glorious Mother Atasha, all glorious religion of love, all glory to the assembled devotees. Jai. And let me stop the recording.